Hello all, it is Nikki and welcome back to the channel where I am taking a break from my other writing projects to write some not quite Greek tragedy. One of my absolute favorite parts of university so far has been the electives that I've been able to take, which have mostly revolved around classical studies. I took some Latin in high school, absolutely loved it. Kept that going into university just because I love the language and learning languages. But in second year, I was also able to take some really interesting courses on like Greco-Roman cultures, Greek myth, and my personal favorite, Greek and Roman tragedy. I don't think I fully understood what tragedy was in the context of like ancient plays, but it's definitely aptly named. There's a lot of death and destruction that goes on. But here's the thing, there is something so insanely cool about reading a play that was written like thousands of years ago, like even before the time of Christ, and still being engaged by the writing. Mind you, they are translated, but you know what I mean. Being engaged by the characters and finding relevance in the content because, I mean, humanity really hasn't changed much. Like obviously some things have changed. We're not as obsessed with snakes, for example, as they were back then, which I'm totally cool with. But all in all, a lot of the themes are themes that we still find reiterated over and over and over again in modern literature. Plus, I mean, there's nothing quite like being able to throw out a reference to Euripides' Medea or Seneca's Oedipus in casual conversation. Talk about feeling scholarly. Oh, Aeschylus' Agamemnon? Yes, that was a quality play, but I rather prefer the humanities myself. I also just feel like saying ancient Greek or Roman names just makes you look smarter. Euripides, Seneca, Aeschylus, Aristophanes. Is it working? For my tragedy class this semester, I have had the opportunity to venture into some creative assignments, which is something that I have to confess I normally just avoid like the plague. Which sounds weird because I obviously love creative writing, but I just feel like I'm very protective and possessive of my creative writing, and in a school setting, I often find it easier to just do something analytical. Just give me 2 plays to compare and contrast and I'll write you an essay, and that's easier because if I do something creative, then I know I'll put so much pressure on myself to make it like the absolute best thing I've ever written. But this semester, I was kind of pushed by the encouragement of a classmate and I had a really great prof. So I decided, you know what? Let's give it a try. Let's do some creative stuff. And it's been so much fun. Absolute game changer. I feel like even if they don't do as well as an analytical paper might, that it's still better in the long run and more useful for me considering what I want to do in the long term, which is write creatively. So for this final paper, I had a choice. I could do a research paper, which was not even on the table, not an option, you lost me at research, or I could do something creative, and I was worried at first that I wouldn't be able to come up with an idea, but then I was doing my assigned reading, which was Euripides' Trojan Women. The light bulb went off, the Lord provided the idea, and we were off to the races. I have decided to write a sequel to Trojan Women by Euripides and also Trojan Women by Seneca. And there are some pros to this plan. Like for one, I get to bring back some characters that according to the mythical cycle are very dead. If you asked Homer or Euripides, they would definitely tell me that those characters did not make it out alive, but I figured let them live, because there are some characters that I really loved and I was genuinely sad when they died. Contrary to what you might think, it's actually very easy to get emotionally invested in these characters and in these plays because they are very well written, they're very evocative. The writing might not be anything like what you'd find in a YA bestseller today, but it's powerful writing, and as someone who just loves old writing in general, I find it very emotional. When I say emotional, it's very emotional. Emotions run high in these plays, everything is really exaggerated and over the top. Everyone is constantly lamenting or alasing or thinking that every problem is the absolute end of the world. It's very entertaining. Cons of this little side project: I've never written tragedy before. I've never really written a play before, I don't think. But I did know from the beginning that I wanted to touch on as many tragic motifs as I possibly could in this sequel. I wanted it to feel somewhat legit, like maybe if you squint and tilt your head and translate it into Old Greek, it could pass as a sort of legitimate sequel. So what does that mean? Tragic motifs. Well, for one, it's a tragedy, so like generally speaking, somebody has to die. I'm sure there are exceptions. I can't think of any off the top of my head based on the ones that I've read, but there are so many tragedies. I'm sure there are tragedies where no one has to die. I would rather that everybody survived in my main character cast, because in my heart of hearts, I really just wanted a happy ending. But I think it's more of a comedy thing than a tragedy thing, so had to make some cuts. Moment of silence for Astyanax. Revenge is another big one. That's a really common motif in tragedy based on the ones that I've read, and check, I mean, we got that. That's kind of what my story is based around. It's one really bad dude finally getting his comeuppance for throwing an innocent little kid off a wall. But don't worry, the kid is fine, at least in my version. Things also tend to shift very quickly and dramatically in these plays. Like one minute you're a king and you have everything and you're on top of the world, and then the next minute you're on your knees and your entire life is in ruins around you and it's all just so terrible. It's very, very over the top. Like characters are very passionate about what they want, whether it's love or revenge or whatever it happens to be. It makes for some fast-moving plots that are kind of hilarious in their ridiculous pacing, but I guess it worked at the time. Not judging Seneca or Euripides, I'm sure they knew what they were doing. One of the other funny aspects of tragedy, or like Greek and Roman drama in general, I guess, is the chorus, which is kind of just like an ensemble that comes on stage near the beginning of the play and is just constantly chiming in. Sometimes they're giving these long speeches about mythology in between what the characters are doing, and sometimes they're actually interacting with the characters as if they are actually there and a part of the story, but they generally don't interfere. So in a lot of cases you'll have like some really dramatic plot going on over here, like someone's getting attacked and the chorus will be off to the side going, oh my goodness, look what's happening, should we do something? But they never do, because they can't. If the chorus could interfere with the plot, then we wouldn't have any plot. It's very interesting and often very amusing, but it's been kind of hard to figure out with my project and with this little piece that I'm writing, because I can't decide whether to do it as a play or in prose. If I do it as a play, then the chorus kind of feels like they're just narrating the action, but if I do it as prose, then the narrator feels like it's constantly just giving choral odes, so I can't really decide what I want there. Still haven't figured that out. Here's one that I also find really interesting and amusing. Generally, I think in ancient times there were things that they didn't show on stage or weren't appropriate to show on stage. For example, if there was some kind of violence going on, like an attack, or if someone's dying, that would often happen off stage, and instead of seeing it, you'd have a messenger rush in from somewhere to say, oh my goodness, you'll never believe what I have seen, so-and-so is dead. And then you'll get 50 plus lines of vivid description of everything that happened. So it's like you're seeing it, but you're not really seeing it. I find that hilarious for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why, but that was fun to incorporate into this story, and also very helpful, because I had some pivotal battle moments that I didn't really want to show, and I didn't have to. I could just skip over them and have my good old messenger come in, tell the whole story. It helped me to streamline the story, and I also think that it feels fairly convincing as a tragic trope, the messenger trope. I have really enjoyed studying Greek tragedy, incorporating aspects of like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. I've even managed, and I generally try to do this in a lot of my assignments, to incorporate some capital T truth into this little story. Since the gods in Greek mythology are absolutely terrible, I figured it wasn't a stretch for one of my Greek characters to become kind of disillusioned with that pantheon, questioning whether they were worth following or whether they were even there, and turning to the one true God instead. And it worked out for him, so maybe he'll evangelize to his fictional followers. Doing this little side project has reminded me that sometimes it's important to just step aside from your big projects and do something totally unrelated to remind yourself of why you love this and why God gave you this passion. It's a way to keep the creative juices flowing, but with a little project that won't put quite so much pressure on you. Just a little tip from a fake tragedian. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe, and comment below with your favorite Greek or Roman tragedy. Or maybe a Greek or Roman tragedy that is on your TBR list, or maybe just one that you've heard of. And as always, do not forget to spend some time in the clouds today.